There's a number between 0 and 500,000 that changes what your hands do when your phone rings. Not what you say, not what you decide, what your hands do. Whether they tense or stay still. Whether your chest tightens before you even see the name on the screen. Most people think the goal is reaching $500,000. They think the finish line is a portfolio balance, a screenshot, a milestone you cross and then celebrate. But the people who actually got there will tell you something strange if you push them hard enough. They'll tell you the money wasn't the thing. The money was a side effect. The real shift happened somewhere around month 4 or month 11 or year 2, when they stopped flinching. When the phone rang and their body didn't brace for impact. When an unexpected expense showed up and their first thought wasn't, how do I survive this? But, how do I want to handle this? That difference, that tiny neurological gap between flinching and choosing, is worth more than the entire balance. And almost nobody talks about it because it doesn't look like anything from the outside. Here's what you were told. You were told that if you work hard enough, if you earn enough, if you climb high enough, the pressure eventually releases. That there's a salary, a title, a position, where the tightness in your stomach finally loosens and you can breathe. You believed it because it made sense. More money, more safety. More safety, more calm. More calm, more freedom. Clean, logical, obvious, and completely wrong. Not wrong in theory, wrong in what actually happens to real people in real careers with real lives. Because what actually happens is this. You earn more, and the first thing that changes isn't your savings rate, it's your expenses. Not dramatically, not stupidly, subtly. The apartment that was fine becomes the apartment that's holding you back. The car that worked becomes the car that doesn't match. The restaurants shift, the neighborhood shifts, the people around you shift. And none of it feels like inflation. It feels like progress. It feels like you're finally living at the level you deserve. But underneath that feeling, underneath the nicer kitchen and the better address and the clothes that fit the new role, something else is happening. Your minimum cost of existence is rising. And your minimum cost of existence is the only number that actually determines how free you are. Think of it like water in a glass. Your income is the water. Your lifestyle is the glass. Most people, when they start earning more, don't keep the same glass and let it overflow. They get a bigger glass, then a bigger one, then a bigger one. And the water level inside never rises because the glass keeps expanding to match it. They're always full to the rim, always exactly at capacity, always one crack away from spilling everywhere. That's not wealth. That's pressure shaped like comfort. The first rule that separates people who reach 500,000 from people who earn 500,000 and have nothing to show for it is this. They stop upgrading the glass. Not forever, not dramatically. They just pause. They earn more and they hold still. They resist the pull of the next thing for long enough that the water starts to rise above the rim and spill into something else. Into savings, into investments, into the gap between what they need and what they have. And that gap, that overflow, is where every single thing that matters financially begins. Not the income, the overflow. Two people earning the same salary can have completely different financial futures based entirely on the size of their glass. One retires at 52. The other works until 67. Same water, different glass. And here's what makes this so dangerous. Nobody around you will tell you your glass is too big. Your friends won't say it because theirs is the same size. Your family won't say it because they're proud you can afford the bigger one. Your employer won't say it because your dependence on the salary is what keeps you manageable. The bigger your glass, the more you need the job. The more you need the job, the less you can negotiate. The less you can negotiate, the more you tolerate. And the more you tolerate, the less free you are, despite making more money than you've ever made in your life. So the first rule is almost embarrassingly simple. Keep the glass the same size while the water rises. Do it for 12 months. Do it for 24. And watch what happens to the space between what you earn and what you need. That space is not savings. That space is freedom in its most raw, unprocessed form. But keeping the glass the same size creates a problem nobody warns you about, a psychological one. Because when the water starts to overflow, when you have money sitting in an account that isn't assigned to any bill or any desire or any obligation, something uncomfortable happens. You feel guilty or anxious or restless, like the money is supposed to be doing something and you're wasting it by letting it sit there. This is where the second rule lives, and it's the one that most people get exactly backwards. They think the goal of saving money is to accumulate it, to watch the number grow, to feel the security of a larger balance. But that's not what the money is for. The money is for buying silence. Not literal silence, internal silence. The silence that replaces the constant hum of low-grade financial anxiety that most people have carried for so long, they think it's just what being an adult feels like. That hum, that background noise. It's there when you wake up and check your phone. It's there when you see an unexpected charge on your card. It's there when someone mentions layoffs at work, or when your landlord sends an email with the subject line, "Update." It's so constant, so woven into daily life that you've stopped hearing it, but it's driving every decision you make. It's why you said yes to the project you didn't want. It's why you stayed quiet in the meeting when you knew the strategy was wrong. It's why you haven't taken a real vacation in 2 years, the kind where you actually disconnect. Because disconnecting means not earning, and not earning means the hum gets louder. The second rule is this: build enough overflow that the hum stops. Not gets quieter, stops. For most people, that number is somewhere between 3 and 6 months of expenses in liquid, accessible, boring cash. Not invested, not optimized, not earning the best possible return. Just there, just quiet, just available. And when you hit that level, something happens that you cannot predict until you've experienced it. You start making different decisions, not because you decided to be braver, because the fear that was making you cautious evaporated so slowly you didn't even notice it was gone. You just woke up one morning and realized you'd said something honest in a meeting. You'd pushed back on a deadline that didn't make sense. You'd told a client no without rehearsing it first. And it wasn't courage, it was math. The math of having enough silence to hear your own thinking for the first time in years. Now here's where most people assume this is about deprivation, about living small, eating cheap, wearing the same clothes until they disintegrate. It's not. The third rule is the one that sounds contradictory until you've lived it. Spend more on the things that actually matter to you. Not more overall, more specifically. Because the reason most people's glass keeps expanding isn't greed, it's blur. They can't tell the difference between what they want and what they're expected to want, between what makes them feel alive and what makes them feel adequate, between spending that creates joy and spending that prevents shame. When someone buys a nicer car, the question that reveals everything isn't, can they afford it? It's whether they bought it because driving matters to them, because they genuinely love cars, because time behind the wheel is one of the few places they feel completely themselves, or whether they bought it because their coworker got one, because the old one was starting to look like it didn't belong in the company parking lot, because someone might see them in it and think less of them. The first reason is real. The second reason is a subscription to other people's perception. And that subscription never ends. It never satisfies. It just bills you monthly for the rest of your life. The third rule is about eliminating every expense that exists only to manage how others see you, and doubling down on the ones that exist because they make your actual life better. This sounds easy. It is brutally hard, because it requires you to separate your identity from your expenditure. And most people have never done that. They've never asked themselves, who am I if nobody can see what I spend? They've never sat with the discomfort of driving an older car when they could afford a new one, not because they're being disciplined, but because they genuinely don't care about cars and never did. They just never had permission to not care. The permission was always drowned out by the expectation. When you eliminate shame-based spending, something shocking happens to the numbers. Not gradually, dramatically. Because shame-based spending is the single largest category in most people's budgets, and it doesn't appear on any spreadsheet. It's distributed across every line item. It's 30% of the rent, the difference between the apartment you need and the one that signals the right things. It's 60% of the car payment. It's 80% of the wardrobe. It's the restaurant you go to because it's where people like you eat, not because the food is better than the place around the corner that costs a third as much. Add it all up, and most professionals are spending somewhere between $1,500 and $3,000 a month on perception management. That's $18,000 to $36,000 a year. That's the difference between reaching $500,000 in 8 years and reaching it never. Let's talk about what the actual math looks like once these first 3 rules are in place, because this is where the abstract starts becoming concrete in a way that's almost unsettling. Take someone earning $110,000 a year. After taxes, roughly $7,000 a month, depending on the state. Standard lifestyle, the one everyone around them has, costs about $6,200. That leaves $800 a month in overflow. $800 a month invested at a reasonable return, say 7% annually, gets you to $500,000 in approximately 28 years. You'd be in your early 60s, functional, fine, normal. Now take the same person, same salary, same city, but they've identified and eliminated shame-based spending. Their actual cost of living drops to $4,200. Not because they're suffering, because they stopped paying for things that only existed to manage perception. Their overflow is now $2,800 a month. Same return, same consistency. They reach $500,000 in roughly 11 years. They're in their early 40s. Same income, same job, same city. 17 years of difference. Not because of a raise. Not because of a side hustle, not because of a better investment strategy, because of a smaller glass. The math is so simple, it's almost offensive. And yet almost nobody does it because the glass doesn't feel like a choice. It feels like a fact. It feels like this is just what life costs. But it's not what life costs. It's what your life costs when it's designed by default instead of by decision. The fourth rule is the one that begins to feel like a different kind of power. And it's the one that separates people who accumulate money from people who accumulate options. Once the overflow starts building, once the accounts start compounding, once the gap between what you need and what you have grows wide enough to breathe in, something changes in how other people experience you. Not because you tell them about your money, because you stop needing things from them. You stop needing the approval, the promotion, the raise, the deal, the yes. You still want those things, but need and want produce completely different body language, completely different tones, completely different outcomes in negotiation. A person who needs the job offer accepts the first number. a person who wants the job offer, names their own. And the difference between those two people is often not skill, not experience, not talent. It's overflow. It's the invisible cushion that lets you pause 3 seconds longer before responding. That lets you say, "Let me think about it," without your pulse rising. That lets you walk away from a negotiation and mean it, not as a tactic, but because you can genuinely afford to. This is what wealth actually is, not the balance, the behavioral change the balance creates. Wealth is the number of bad options you can survive without fear. Read that again and apply it to your own life. How many bad options can you currently absorb? If your company restructures tomorrow, if your biggest client leaves, if your industry shifts, if someone offers you a deal that feels wrong in your gut but looks good on paper, can you say no? Can you wait? Can you sit in uncertainty for 3 months without making a desperate decision? If you can't, your salary isn't buying you freedom. It's buying you the appearance of stability while leaving you completely exposed to anything unexpected. The fourth rule is this: treat your overflow not as wealth to be spent or even invested aggressively, but as optionality to be preserved. The first 100,000 in overflow is not investment capital. It's behavioral capital. It's the money that changes how you show up, how you negotiate, how you sleep at night. It's the money that makes you dangerous in the best possible way. Not because you're reckless, but because you're free enough to be honest. And honesty, real honesty, the kind that most people can't afford, is the single most valuable negotiating tool that exists. Somewhere around the point where your overflow crosses 150,000, maybe 200, you begin to notice something happening that's hard to describe because it's not about money anymore. It's about time. Not in the abstract productivity hack way that people usually talk about time, in the real, physical, felt sense of it. Mornings start to feel different, not because you're doing morning routines or meditating or journaling, because the urgency is gone. The alarm goes off, and your first thought isn't about what you owe or what you have to do or what will happen if you fall behind. Your first thought is quieter than that, almost empty. And in that emptiness, you find something you haven't had in years: margin, space between the events of your life, room to think a thought all the way through before the next one arrives. And that margin starts producing ideas. Not hustle ideas, not side project ideas, real ideas, slow ones, the kind that only appear when the noise stops long enough for them to surface, the kind that change careers, relationships, entire life trajectories, not because they're brilliant, because they're yours. They came from you, not from pressure, not from anxiety, not from the constant need to produce and perform and prove. Just from you, sitting in the quiet that your overflow created. The fifth rule is about protecting this margin at all costs, because it will be attacked. Not by emergencies, by opportunities, by good things, by the raise that comes with the promotion, that comes with the expectation, that comes with the new floor, that comes with the bigger glass. The most dangerous moment in the journey from 0 to 500,000 is not the beginning. It's the middle. It's the moment around 200 or 250,000 where the money feels real for the first time, and the old patterns start whispering. You could upgrade now and still be fine. You could loosen up. You've earned it. You could raise the floor just a little. You can afford it. And technically you can. That's what makes it so dangerous. You can afford the upgrade. You can afford the bigger glass. What you can't afford is what the bigger glass costs you in time. Because every dollar added to your monthly baseline pushes the finish line further away. Not by a little, by months, sometimes years. A $500 increase in monthly spending at this stage doesn't cost you $500. It costs you $500 times every remaining month until the portfolio can sustain itself. That's tens of thousands of dollars in additional savings needed. That's years of additional work for a slightly nicer apartment, for a car that's 3 years newer, for meals that taste 10% better at restaurants that cost 60% more. The fifth rule is the simplest and the hardest of all. When the whisper comes, and it will come, when the voice says you've earned the upgrade, you answer with a question. Will this purchase move me closer to the moment where work becomes optional, or further from it? If further, the answer is no. Not because you can't afford it, because you can't afford what it costs in time. And time is the only currency you can't earn back. Here's where almost everyone destroys what they've built. And I want to be very specific because this is the exact mistake, the precise error that turns a trajectory toward freedom into a permanent loop of almost getting there. The mistake is not blowing the money on something stupid. That's obvious, and most disciplined people avoid it. The mistake is subtle, almost invisible. It's the slow, imperceptible reinflation of the glass. It happens over months, sometimes years. A small subscription here, a slightly nicer grocery store there, a vacation that costs $1,500 more than it needed to. None of it feels significant in isolation. All of it compounds in exactly the same way your investments do, except in the wrong direction. Your expenses compound against you the same way your savings compound for you. A $100 monthly increase in spending at age 35 doesn't cost you $100 a month. Over a 30-year period, invested at 7%, that $100 a month would have become over $120,000. You didn't spend $100. You spent $120,000. And you did it without noticing. This is why people who earn $200,000 a year retire at the same age as people who earn 90. Because the glass expands precisely in proportion to the water. Because the lifestyle inflates to absorb the income. Because nobody around them is measuring the gap. Everyone is measuring the gross. The net is invisible, and the net is everything. There's a particular kind of stillness that arrives when you've done this long enough. When the overflow has been building for 5 years, 7 years. When the portfolio crossed $250,000 and then kept going. When the emergency fund became something more than an emergency fund. When the behavioral changes are no longer changes, but just the way you operate. You stop checking the balance. Not because you don't care, because you don't need to. The same way you don't check whether your house still has a roof every morning. You know it's there. You trust the structure. And inside that trust is something that looks from the outside like nothing at all. No one can see it. No one comments on it. It doesn't show up in your clothes or your car or your address. But it shows up in your voice. In the 3-second pause before you answer a question that used to make you anxious. In the way you hold a negotiation without rushing toward resolution. In the way you hear bad news and your body stays still. Your hands don't tense, your chest doesn't tighten. The phone rings and you just answer it. That's the thing the money was always for. Not the balance, not the number, not the screenshot. The stillness. The phone rings and your hands stay open.